They're not
Free fire engineer,
sticking in theater chairs.
probably gonna go to
Yeah.
1:30 at night. Particularly when we did the artist class.
that was the worst.
You guys are doing such a great job.
We're trying to.
Yeah, it's really working.
I saw the other day. He's not doing
Seems like everybody's getting down and out.
Okay, we're going to call the 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting of the Ojai Building Appeals Board for Wednesday, February 12th, 2014. First thing we'll entertain from Sherry is a roll call. And I want to mention one thing about the roll call. Tom Farmer is mobile by wheelchair and said he was going to make every attempt to come. So we'll have to make sure we break or do whatever necessary if he does make it.
Thank you. Farmer, Hilgers, Daddy,
Here.
Wyrick,
Here.
Hanson.
And Board Member Hanson, would you honor us with the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item, as always, is a public communications item. That's for members of the public to address the appeals board on any matters that are other than scheduled agenda items. Again, these are for matters that we may discuss, but usually reference to staff and not for any action. So are there any citizens that would like to come forward on public communication? Seeing none?
Well,
Sure, come on. Yeah. If you,
tell everybody to pull the mic down.
excuse me?
Pull the mic down where we can hear them.
All right. If you wish to, if you have something of interest you'd like to bring our attention to, just pull the mic down and please proceed. So you're supposed to tell us who you are.
My name is Will Castagna,
Okay.
and I have just recently discovered that there was I don't know what to call it, but a provision in the regulation that takes what are called garage. Oh, hi.
Yeah, we'll take a little break here and let Mr. Farmer get in here. I'm sorry, Will.
That's all right.
You know.
Just put them right here.
Oh, no, we're glad to have you, Tom. Glad you're here.
With two legs. With two legs, right?
Yeah. We're, Tom, we're in public communication, and Will here, Mr. Castagna? Castagna is just starting to discuss a concern he wants to bring to our attention under public communications. Okay? Are you ready for him to?
Yeah, we just turned this off.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I forgot to do that once. Very embarrassing.
I turned mine off as well.
Okay. All right. I think we're all settled now. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh, that's all right. So there's a provision apparently that I recently learned about that prohibits what are being called garage conversions, I think.
Yes, there's a line in the City Council resolution that there's been under much discussion for change, by the way, It says right at the beginning there, unpermitted garage conversions are expressly prohibited under the existing resolution.
That was not apparent at the time that the newspaper articles came out and the city was asking people to come forward. I did that. I'm not sure exactly what mine is. There are no records of it. I've checked with the county and the city. Nobody has original plans. Mine is what it was when I bought the house.
I understand, yeah.
And so I wanted to address that, and really, I don't have much commentary other than what I've just told you with respect to this. I'm really more interested in hearing what this group has to say about that issue in particular, because I came forward in good faith based on what the publications were. What was there was there when I bought the house the way it was 10 years ago, and I would really love to get this taken care of. Went through the thing with the sewer and got all cleaned up with that. So just personally, I'm interested in getting it handled and moving on, and I'm very interested to hear what you all are doing to help move that process forward.
Thank you. I think, we can briefly discuss this, not take any action, but we can briefly discuss it. I'd like to ask one question. You have an estimate of when this was constructed originally?
The house was built in 1953. The city has no plans or records from it. I checked with Sherry, and there's nothing on record. I checked with the county, and they said, well, you're in the city limits, so we don't have those records. And I said, well, I checked with the city, and they don't have them. They said, well, when it went from county to city, we transferred all those records to the city. So there are no records, essentially. Whenever that happened back in the 50s, they were lost.
Okay, interesting. Mr. Daddy.
Could I get clarification? Are we talking about no records of the second unit or no records of any buildings on the lot that are available in the city?
There are no records of either. There's no plans. There's no, I bought the house and I went and looked at it and there it was. So I said, okay, I'll take it.
And how long ago?
That was,
I mean, how did you contact the city? What did you do? You just sent them a note, or went in, or got an application, or said I want to, or what happened in that process?
when the publications came out and said we're having and I think at the time it was called an amnesty program, I said, great, I want to do that. I want to do the right thing, make sure that, and I've taken great care to make sure that everything that's in there is done properly. So I said I want to apply. And so I came down, and I believe I talked with you, Sherry, and filled out whatever the form was that she gave me to apply for. Was it a permit application or some sort of form that was referred to in the public documentation? And I filled it out, and Sherry told me that when there was something that it was all very new, and that was when there was something to discuss that I would be contacted. And I didn't hear anything until I called Sherry last week, and she said that mine had been put aside because of the exclusion. And so that's where we are.
Mr. Farmer.
Yeah, I have a question. So you came forward during the amnesty, was that during the Ojai Sanitary District when they come out with their amnesty? And
Well, I did that.
yeah, okay, you
But-
took care of that.
Yeah, I took care of that, and they're all paid up, and we're all happy about that. And then there was an announcement in the newspaper that the city was having a
Mhm.
second unit amnesty program, and that anyone that wanted to take advantage of that should come down and do that. So I called and talked
Right.
to someone, and then ended up coming down and filling out the application form.
Yeah. So you actually followed the proper protocol, really. I mean, you came to the city and you said, you know, that you had paid your fee or whatever, and,
Right.
but you obviously didn't get the right answer.
Well, I didn't get any answer
Right.
at all.
Right.
And now I understand what happened, that it was put aside. I had no idea about the exclusion,
Okay,
that I didn't take the time or the energy or effort to go and actually look up the law. I just sort of took the invitation on its face and came in.
and at that time, nobody communicated to you that it didn't pertain to second year?
No,
or-
when I talked with Sherry earlier,
Yeah.
she shared with me that at that time, it was all very new.
Okay.
and She hadn't read it, I hadn't read it, so she just gave me the form and I filled it out.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, yeah.
Board Member Henson, did you?
Yeah. Do you know what your setbacks are on the garage? How far you are from the side or the,
It's not more than a couple of feet
on the side,
on the side.
in the back?
From the back, probably at least 10 feet, if not more.
Okay, okay.
So it's a narrow lot.
And you have paid for your sewer hookup
Mhm.
under the idea that you would have your garage conversion made legal?
If that's what it is, yes. Whatever, like I said, it is what it is. It's sitting there. And it was that way when I bought the property. And.
Well, I think thank you for coming, so we can, because this only highlights a lot of the reason we're reviewing this entire program, all right? And so this is one of the issues that is being reviewed. We just had a workshop about this. The chairman of the Planning Commission is here tonight. We're going to be getting together Friday afternoon, and in fact, that's a public meeting. We're going to be going through a discussion of maybe perhaps a joint recommendation, trying to achieve a joint recommendation for changing the program as it now stands, making improvements in it. And this kind of input is important for that. I'm also struck by listening to Mr. Palmer with the sanitary district talk about some of these same issues where, you know, they're dealing with construction in the 40s and 50s for which there are no records. And what do you do? How do you deal with that? And so, you know, these are important points. So I appreciate, but again, we can't take any action here under public communication.
I understand.
But I'm telling you what we are trying to address this and many other problems.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
from my perspective, just mine personally, you know, I'm just trying to do the right thing.
Right.
I bought the house, and that thing was there, and I said, well, you know, I could do a lot of different, I could take a lot of different approaches, but I think the right thing to do is to take advantage of the, you know, later on when the
Right.
sewer thing came along, I said, count me in.
I'm here.
you know?
I'll fork over the money and
City,
do the right
and,
thing.
You know,
Yeah.
it's cost me a lot, you know the deal. It costs
Yes.
a lot of dough to do that. So I want to do the right thing. I think it's important to have this kind of housing available.
Right.
I've very much enjoyed the opportunity to provide that. You know, the people that I've had there are, you know,
Right.
great, and it all works out. And of course, it's an assist to me to be able to continue to live in Ojai and raise my family and all that. So, you know, from a personal perspective, I'm standing here because I'm trying to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Forward,
Yeah.
and I want to facilitate that.
We need
in a way.
to kind of share.
How long has the process taken since you went in and went on the list till you called last week? What was the interval in that time?
I'm going to guess 8 months. Do you think it's about that long?
And I'm going to ask a question that nobody probably can tell. How was it actually determined that that was a garage conversion with no plans at all for the property? What was used to determine that that wasn't a carriage house, a separate building, a granny flat, a guest house originally? How was that determined that was a garage conversion?
I don't know. I don't know whether Sherry could shed any light on that, because I wasn't part of that process. I just submitted what I submitted, and I mean, I don't know, maybe I even wrote that on the,
Yeah, I
Thank you.
want to extend a privilege to our city manager to respond if he wishes to. I'm not asking that he do it necessarily. And Mr. Clark, I'm not demanding anything that you, I'm just, we're not taking action here, we're just hearing, but I would, just extend the courtesy to you if you wanted to comment,
So I think the way you characterized it is correct. Currently, if this is a garage conversions are not permitted under the second unit compliance program, but it's an issue that you and the Planning Commission have been talking about, and I'm sure will be discussed in the coming months.
So Mr. Clark is helping us we're trying to clean this up, so people aren't caught in these catch-22s that you're describing. We're sensitive to this, we're trying to do something about it.
My understanding is that the city is aware of the number of second units that are out there. Just have personal curiosity. Do we know how many of them were formerly or look like they might have formerly been garages versus not? Do we have any kind of?
It's a big number, can't tell you exactly. This has come up before, and there's not a big, Mr. Clark, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a kind of a fudgy number. We know large numbers, how many might be eligible, how you break that down, and how many of those garage conversions, it's a guess. So, Mr. Farmer?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know that this came, I think you paid your fees right around 2011, and what happened is, says ordinance allows property owners with unpermitted connections to come clean with no penalties. And that's basically what you did. And nobody at that time said anything that that you called it a garage conversion or anything like that, right? They just went ahead and you paid your fee and they approved it.
Right.
Yeah, so, okay, thank you.
Again, I'm glad you were here. It's very timely. It was timely for Mr. Merck to hear this as well. We're going to be, Friday, we're going to be working on this and other issues.
Great,
So
thanks.
thank you. I appreciate it.
for allowing me the
Beg your patience. We are working on this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public communications before we move to next agenda item? Next agenda item would be the consent item, which is minutes of the Appeals Board. I've looked through them. I have no issues with them myself. Does any other board members have any issues with the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve it submitted. Board Member Hanson? Second, Board Member Hilger? Sherry, do we need to do a roll call?
Farmer? Hilgers? Daddy? Wyrick?
Yes.
Hanson?
Okay, let's move on to discussion item number 2, our agenda item number 2. I want to make a very short preliminary comment on this. This was delegated to us by the City Council. It's a matter of Article 9, the Building Code. Planning Commission deals with supporting the council and being a resource for the council for review and comment on matters associated with Article 10. We deal with Article 9. It's kind of a new thing. We haven't been in existence that long, but it certainly seems that council, in their wisdom, felt there was a hole here in terms of a group that would provide, would act as a resource for them in reviewing anything having to do with the building code and building code changes. We understand it's an important issue, and we have been trying to get to this discussion for a while now, since it was delegated to us by the council. We understand that that staff has been trying to work with the FAR district to get some additional information, and recommended that we go ahead and cancel this meeting because of some information that they were still trying to obtain. I took issue with that. I take responsibility for us all being here tonight because I felt it was important to start the discussion and afford everyone an opportunity to ask questions directly. And I appreciate the attendance of the fire district people here, so we can get this discussion going and address this important issue in a thorough but still timely fashion. So I am responsible for you having to make another trip up the hill. But I did think it was important that we begin this discussion, even though information may not be complete. So I just wanted to explain my position on this. And so I think that, I don't know, the other issue we had was that the packet of material that was offered to the city council, we got it on Monday. Time has been short. I've read through it. I don't know if others have had a chance to read through it. And I'm open to suggestions for how to proceed. One way would be to do a round robin where members of the, especially from the fire district here, could respond to questions. Or we could offer the courtesy of maybe a very short presentation that you might want to make before we get into a round robin of questions. I'd like to extend that courtesy if any of you would like to make that's not a long thing, okay? Because the main thing is we're going to be trying to generate the kind of questions that we feel like we need to get answered for us to discharge our responsibilities to council properly.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Good evening. My name is Masood Aragi. I'm the fire marshal with the Fire Protection District. I'm all about short presentations, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
I'm just here tonight asking for your approval of, or recommendation of approval to the City Council for resolution on Appendix L, approval of Appendix L. I just want to point out how important that appendix is to the fire district. That is an appendix, that's one tool as overall tools that we use in the fire district for fire protection, strategic plan for fire protection in the county. And this appendix deals with automatic fire sprinklers. And we feel it is one of the tools that is necessary to provide the life safety and property protection, along with many other ones. We have tools such as access roads and brush clearance and water available for fire protection. Those are all the tools that we need for fire protection. This particular one is important because it has proven over the years for its life safety, for property protection, and we have used it, and we believe it is validity to approving that or that resolution.
Okay.
That's what I said. I'm going to make it short. I'm going to be open
No, I
to
appreciate,
questions.
that's where we need to get
However
to. Absolutely.
you'd like to proceed.
Thank you. And I really don't want to lead off because I have a bad habit of doing that. And so I'd like to start over on my far right, Mr. Farmer. I'll put you on the spot. Did you want to lead off with any questions? Or you have-
No, I read through it as much as I could, but to me it was fine.
Okay. All right. Ms. Hilger?
I'm the same, but I was just, I'm always concerned about the cost, the additional cost, and throughout the literature that I have, the statements are made that it, well, here's one, substantially the same as that which is currently in place,
That's correct.
and
Well, the ordinance, this Appendix L hasn't changed really. And all we did was editorial change since 2007. It has been the same ordinance ever since. And the cost that you're referring to, we provided, or at least that's what we were trying to get some numbers from
right.
contractors to give you some cost estimate. And I do have those numbers here if you'd like to see. There is cost associated with that, but when it comes to life safety and the overall construction of the project, it is very minimal. You are paying for insurance basically for property and life protection. And the residential aspects of it is already, by state, is required. So we mainly concentrate on commercial, certain size of commercial occupancies, and any additions to residential or commercials. That's what this appendix address. But yes, there is a cost associated with it. But overall, we believe the benefits of it, and we have seen it over the years, is far exceeds that initial cost, which is a lot of times very similar to the cost of the flooring. They're not very expensive to install. But that's what we think is the weighing the balance is, it makes sense.
Before we go back to, Mr. Farmer raised his hand. Before we go back, I want to just mention those in the audience that may want to speak to this agenda item. After we go through one round of board members, give an opportunity for people in the audience that might want to speak to this matter, and then we'll probably have another round. Mr. Farmer?
Yeah, I understood it, concerned commercial properties. And, but when you say additions
Yes,
to residential,
yes.
maybe you can explain that.
Yes, residential occupancies, the way the ordinance is written, Any additions that are over 1,000 square feet and more than 50% of the existing floor area is what is required. Then it will trigger the sprinklers. Otherwise, it will not.
So if I understand it right, that would take under the second units, right?
I'm sorry, second
Under
unit?
is that right, Chairman Wyrick?
That was one of my questions. Whether being detached matters or not. In
Being
terms,
attached, yes.
Yeah,
Are we talking about additions that are
he's talking
attached?
about a second unit that may or may not be,
if
may
the
be
sec-
detached from the primary residence. Whether if you, let's say, added a 1,200, if it was allowed, a 1,200 square foot second unit, whether that would trigger sprinkling on the entire property.
New construction requires it because the state requires it also.
But that's the second unit. What if there's another unit already on the property?
It doesn't matter. I mean, the second unit is a new construction. It requires sprinklers and new.
Certainly, the second unit does. Does it
does
affect the
not-
primary residence?
No, it does not affect the primary.
Unless it has share a contiguous wall. That's correct.
Unless it's tied in.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what you're saying then is anything over 1,000 square foot
And over 50%.
and over 50% of the property,
Existing. Of the existing house.
existing
that we're
structure.
adding to it, yes.
okay, does require new sprinkler system, fire sprinklers.
That's correct.
And that's a state requirement, that's,
The state requires on all new constructions. They don't deal with additions. We are the one who deal with the additions.
And
okay.
if I'm reading the comparison that you furnished correctly, you correct me if I'm wrong, the state code does not require on additions for residences.
That's correct.
And they're
On a-
proposing
on a one and
that-
two family
So-
dwellings, they do not.
That be added as a requirement.
Right, so
above
if you
state
called it
minimum.
remodeling or addition, or, that wouldn't necessarily be new construction,
That's
right?
correct. Then remodeling, if they're interior remodelings, or
Mm-hmm.
if the additions are less than what I said, it will not.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Yes, yes,
Ask a
please.
follow-up
Yes.
question. Masood, can you speak to the fact of a U occupancy being converted to R3 and whether that would be required to be fire
And-
sprinklered and attached?
And Mr. Stewart,
setting?
let's use plain language for the record.
Okay.
That would mean like you have a barn and you don't want to make it an apartment, right?
That would be like a single-family garage
Yes.
and it being converted to a residence.
How can that happen?
Well, no, wait a
Well,
second.
I-
They don't
I-
convert garages.
Well, I understand that, but I think it's important for the board,
Right.
since they're going to be looking at that.
And I also understand while we're talking about that issue, it matters whether the garage is attached or not.
Right. Could you
Right.
speak to that?
Okay, there were several things happening
Okay.
at the same time. I was trying to understand what the last question was.
And I apologize.
No, go right ahead. Occupancy U is a utility building, basically, in common sense language. Right. Non-habitable. Yeah, yeah.
Single-family garage being converted to a R3 single-family house. Would that require fire sprinklers?
Under the ordinance, it only deals with new structures. That particular one is not under the ordinance. The ordinance is specifically talks to new structures,
So that would be considered a remodel?
if you will. But there are other codes, I'm saying the ordinance itself, but there are other codes may require it, but it's not the ordinance itself. If you read the fire code may require it, but not the ordinance. The one we're dealing with is not. Under Appendix L, that is not what we're talking about. Now, I have my staff here, Larry could also add on. Do you have any other?
I know where you're going.
So
Right, let's,
that would be a change of occupancy.
Let me
Okay, yeah, let's
clarify.
not, we're
Okay.
not going to get too much in the weeds on this.
Okay.
I can
Yeah.
clarify. It's very,
Yeah.
if the garage, which was referred to as a U occupancy, is being converted to a dwelling area, if it's attached to an existing single-family dwelling, that's a remodel. It would not trigger a retrofit of fire sprinklers. And then however you deal with any new covered parking, whether you're adding on a covered garage or whether you're doing detached, will depend on what you're doing there. However, if that existing building, that accessory U occupancy, garage building, barn, whatever, is detached from anything else and is converted to a dwelling unit, the state law mandates fire sprinklers. And it's considered new construction under state law.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Daddy? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have you wanted to add something on that?
No, that's what I was just saying. Other provisions will require it, not the ordinance. I just want to
Gotcha.
make sure we're clear.
I
This-
understand.
this
In other words,
ordinance
it's not
does
a over and above state code, it is state code.
That's correct.
All right. Mr. Daddy?
Hi.
Hi.
We had a nice talk. He called me. We talked for about an hour and a half the other day. I'm still not happy that the state of California nor the state fire marshal have accepted this code. It's not state law, and when I look at your publication here, it said that the state fire marshal has not accepted this. I see a lot of issues that seem to be tied in that I think that can be mitigated and kind of eliminate a number of these issues. I understand we have concerns that if we have a house fire, it'll cause a brush fire. And my answer to that is we shouldn't have the brush around the house. That should be mitigated, and we shouldn't have these dead trees. It goes in to talk about other items that I think are questionable, especially for OHI. When we talk about seismic, I'm not going to depend on Golden State Water having a system that will have water. We can't even get these people to tie their lines together to make it work, nor do we have hydrants that work, nor do we have lines that are pressurized enough to work. So when I start looking in here about the findings of the 3 items where we can go above state code, I really don't see how they apply here.
Okay.
As far as climate, having a unit inside, as far as geography, I understand that may be a limiting factor, but that's an issue. That's the fire department, the way they configure. I've got our taxes from last year, and we paid $1,500,000 for fire protection out of the city of Ojai out of a budget of $12 million. And that's a pretty sizable one. So when I see that we're a little shaky on, whether we're going to have response and have coverage and the other things, that kind of concerns me too. And as far as the topography, I just don't see the necessity to go above state code. I've changed state code. I've gotten things done with the state. We've lobbied to have an extra fee put on people that live in the wildland interface, and that was successful. We have over 800,000 people paying an additional fee. So I think if we have items, I would rather see other items put in here. We continue to, and we've asked to have code upgrades put in where we're not going to allow shake roofs with a 50% loss to continue to be replaced indefinitely, Class C roof. That amazes me, because if we're going to use the argument of topography and climate and all these other issues and the brush and the interface, it appears to me that we're not doing those things that we can mitigate easily. That won't be an expense to the homeowners. When it's damaged, that's an expense that the insurance company picks up. So I would kind of think, and we had this discussion, that there's a lot of other things that we need to do, and we haven't attempted, and we haven't gotten help. We've got some very heavy brush area at 1002 Signal Street. I can take you in the back room and show you that giant map. That's 4 acres of huge brush. It happens to be right behind the ex-mayor's house. And so when that 4 acres on top goes, his house, Pat McPherson's house, a few other houses are right below that fall. That's not going to be good for them. I've talked to a couple of contractors, and when I saw the $1,000 to $1,500 range, what they said is, hey, Bob, it's going to cost $800 for a plan. It's going to be at least a couple $100 for the permit. We have other issues. I talked to you about the house I lost on Pepper Tree Lane by the other fire unit, and I had to put in a 2-inch line all the way down Pepper Tree Lane. Currently, I don't know what Ventura River costs, but I do know what it cost here with Golden State. That's $250 a month for the meter for a 2-inch line. So there's $3,000 depending on what's going on with that. And when I take a look, I start getting a nosebleed around $4,500, and that's before we lay a single piece of pipe in. And my suggestion is that you would help us solve a lot of these other issues, so it takes away some of the issues and gives you better capacity, makes the entire area safe. We've got some low-hanging fruit that can be easily determined and easily put into effect. And then go back to the state, and when the state feels that your issue is something that the fire marshal and the building code is ready to adopt, then we should adopt it, because it'll be no choice to adopt, it'll be law. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm hoping will happen out of this.
Could you?
If I may address, yes.
Sure, absolutely, please.
So Daddy, you throw at me a lot of stuff, so I'm trying to remember each one of them so I can address them. So I'm going to do my best. First of all, with regards to the state, the question is, if I understand correctly, why are we more restrictive than the state? And if it is important, then let the state make that decision. Am I correct?
No. Why hasn't the state adopted your request? It's not why, it's why haven't, I'm sure someone's gone to the fire marshal in the state and
Why-
said, we would like to have this adopted. That has been done, correct?
Yes, let me, our ordinance, the way it's written, we file with the state with those findings, as you mentioned. Now, the state always adopts the code as the minimum. The state of California, when they adopt the International Fire Code, the International Fire Code is the minimum. The state of California adds amendments to that code that it is pertinent to the state of California. They leave the local jurisdictions, they give the authority to local jurisdiction to make amendments, to make ordinances that can go above and beyond what the state requires, that fits their geographical areas, their boundary that they protect. Because different geographical area, different part of the state have different needs. So the state always leaves us to local jurisdiction to make those amendments to the code that it is above and beyond the minimum that the state has already adopted. So that authority has given to the local jurisdiction because of that. The state has never set the standard high and said this is the max. They always said this is the minimum. So what we are dealing with, what the state from the California Fire Code, is the minimum standard. So what you see is what we believe for Ventura County is important, and we have gone above that minimum. Now, let me kind of give you a little bit of perspective, if I may. Back in the early 80s, we adopted our first ordinance. That ordinance required sprinklers in a structure that were 5,000 square foot or more. In 2007, and state had nothing like that back then. In 2007, we modified our ordinance to consider all residential occupancies to be sprinklered. State didn't have anything like that. State adopted the same exact standard January 1st, 2011. It took state that many years to come to the same point that we have come many years ago. We benefited from, because we as a fire protection district, we look ahead, we know what is important for our communities, we see what is important to protect our communities as part of our strategic plan, then we adopt those in our codes. The state is slow in getting those requirements and getting where we are. Doesn't mean we don't work with the state, we work with the state very closely to add our requirements, to make sure our requirements gets there. We work very closely with the state for them to catch up.
I have a question, because when you take a look and you put the 3 different ways that we can go above state code, I don't see any help in mitigating those. And this is something that I believe the taxpayers deserve to get out of their tax base, not something that they should be individually paying for. So when we talk about it will help not cause brush fires, I believe we need to eliminate the brush. I believe we need to eliminate the other issues. And putting these flying frisbees back on homes, we still put them on the outside of homes here in Ojai. So I'm kind of concerned that what we're doing is we're cost shifting just directly to the individual homeowners when there's lots of things that can be done to mitigate these issues that we've used as the reason to have the sprinklers. Remove those issues, and then we remove the issues to have the sprinklers, the reasons.
If I may.
Please.
If you look at our program, fire sprinklers is only one aspect of the internal fire protection that we use. There are different tools we have available. When we refer to a fire hazard reduction, we have a very, very robust fire hazard reduction program. As a matter of fact, when we brought our fire hazard reduction program, when we developed that in our jurisdiction, nothing like it existed anywhere else. Now it has become one of the trademark, is basically the one that everybody model after, because we have a clearance of 100 foot. The state didn't have anything. They lost a lot of homes, and if you see, we have been enjoying the benefits of saving a lot of homes during brush fires because we have the 100-foot clearance that from the structures. And if you look at it, the state came up with a requirement at one point with the 30 square feet. Well, I mean, with the 30 feet from the structure. We are above it. Now the state has gone even to 100 foot, as we were. So for many years we were 100 foot. The state caught up with where we are. So we have other elements of fire protection. We have the brush clearance. We have our roads, we try to keep them clear. We have our fire hydrants, we try to keep them, put them in place in locations where we can need them. We try to have adequate fire flow out of the hydrants for fire protection. We put fire sprinklers in a building to make sure their fire is contained to a small size so we don't use a lot of water, we don't use a lot of resources. We do a variety of things for fire protection. So when we're talking about fire from a structure getting to the brush, we have a 100-foot clearance. We require that. Now, what do? We put sprinklers in homes that prevents from embers getting into the brush, because embers can travel far more than that. We try to contain the fire to a very small area. If you look at the sprinklers, when they operate at the earliest stages of fire. The fire will not get beyond a small area. I showed a video during the city council meeting that I thought it was beneficial to see how fire can grow.
I know that, but we've made requests from the local fire from this station. We've asked for assistance with brush clearance,
Yes.
hazard reduction, health and safety, a number of items, and I haven't seen any action taken. And you and I have talked about this. I talked to you when we adopted the fire map a few years ago, that it was incorrect. I called the state, Dave Sapsis. Mr. Stewart was on that one. I called you directly. I asked for some help. I didn't get an answer back. I never got a call back. So what I'm saying is that I believe that we need to reduce some of these things too, but not with the sprinklers. We need to start reducing the things that you say the sprinkler might cause. Let's reduce those now. We don't need to have the sprinklers to reduce those hazards. So
If I may suggest a different approach, the sprinklers is an important part of the fire protection. Rather than eliminate that, my suggestion is to keep that and then work with the city, as you mentioned, work with the city, work with you guys, try to add additional fire protection that is needed for this community. Absolutely. These code cycles comes up again. More than happy to work with the city. When I talked to you the other day, I had my staff research the areas that you told me. My staff is here. They have information for you. If you like, after the meeting, we can discuss those. Absolutely. I'm all for working with the city to have it more protected beyond what this code says. Absolutely. It is important for the city of Ojai because it is in a community we're surrounded by brush. It is important for this community to be safe, as we have done over the years. But to eliminate the important aspects of this ordinance, which is fire protection, and then come and just think about these other things we need to add, I think would be not the right approach. I think we need to have this in place, add more to it. And by all means, I'm willing to work with the city, work with anybody to do that, because that's important to you and to me and to the community.
Thank you. Don't go away.
I won't.
My turn.
Sure.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from.
Yes.
I'm an economist, and a lot of work that I did was in benefit cost analysis involving life risk.
Yes.
Did that professionally for a number of years. Worked for the EPA, contract basis, did expert testimony on these matters. So it's something that I come at this from the standpoint of benefit cost analysis, which is ultimately what we're talking about here. Because we're talking about the benefit of the life safety damage, property damage, so on and so forth, against the cost. Every use of resources should be justified, and so inherent in what you're asking us to do is to do retrofits of existing construction.
Not all.
Not all, but that's part of it. That's
Correct.
part of the additional requirement
The
above state code.
additions are fitting into the criteria
Right,
of the
and
ordinance, yes.
and what that triggers for the whole property, for the whole building.
That's correct.
And inherent, from all the reading I've done, inherent in doing retrofits versus new construction, the benefits don't really change, but the costs go up. In other words, the benefit-cost ratio narrows. It's higher for new construction than it is retrofit, inherently. I don't think that can be.
I'm sorry, sitting.
It costs more to do a retrofit than it does
That's
new construction. The benefits are about the same, costs are higher, so it's a smaller benefit-cost ratio for retrofit than new construction. So you're asking, that's what I was, if I'm not making myself clear, I'm sorry.
No, I understand.
And so so it becomes important to look at the benefits and costs. And I think Mr. Daddy alluded to that, where seriously, when you mentioned a couple $1,000s before, I got calls the next morning saying, "Really?" I got a lot of calls because people watched the tape and they listened, and they didn't believe it. Okay, and because and I'm just telling you really frankly. Because they felt like you were leaving out some of the costs. I mean, I believe just your fees for reviewing plans and inspections on additions are about $640.
That's correct.
That's just the permit fee,
that's correct.
and inspection fee. That's before anything else. That's before you pay someone to do the plans according to your specifications, and so on and so forth. So I tried to look up some professionally done benefit cost studies. I found one that was kind of interesting, just to act as a springboard for discussion. It's done by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Office of Applied Economics, done in the early 2000s. And this is what I found interesting. According to them, for residential fire sprinklers, and this is new construction, not retrofits, right around $5,000 was the net present value of the benefit, using a value of a statistical life of $8 million, was at the high end of what's done in public policy. Most economists kind of come in terms of our behavior and what choices we make about risk and by how we're valuing our lives is somewhere in the 1 to 3 million range, and governments tend to get up there in the 7 or 8 million range. This is using $8 million, the high end of the value of a statistical life, to come up with the $5,000 number. 74.6% of that number, that total benefit, is the fatalities averted. The 8.99% is the insurance credit, about the assumption being 8% savings on your fire insurance premium. Mm-hmm. So injuries averted, direct uninsured property losses averted, and indirect costs averted are de minimis. According to this analysis, all the benefit is in insurance savings and in fatalities averted. Over 80%. All right, and then they move to the cost. I didn't get a chance to read this whole thing in terms of the discount rates that they're using. I think they used a 45-year life. They had a cost ranging for a larger home of around $2,000. But that $2,000 estimate of cost was based on using PEX. I don't know if PEX is allowed in Ventura or not.
Yes.
Not including the backflow preventer, not including the need for any new taps, no meter fees, and no design and review and permit fees. So, and also using a labor cost estimate of for design of $40 an hour and a labor and for installation of $50 an hour, saying that the sprinkler fitter and plumber trades are estimated at $50 an hour than the 07 estimator. Obviously, California has high costs, okay? And so what I'm asking here is that if you look at this, you're starting to get to a narrowing of that benefit cost ratio when you start talking, this is for new construction. Most estimates I've seen for retrofitting is it can be 2 to 3 times as much. I could be wrong, but that's what I've read. It depends, obviously, on the nature of construction. So for me, and this is my question, and I'm sorry for the long buildup. As part of proposing Appendix L, have you done benefit cost analysis for the specific provisions of Appendix L, especially the additional triggering of retrofitting?
Yes, if I may just bring something up.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things I was trying to do is ask. Well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. During the council meeting, that the question came up about the costs. You understand? I don't have any. I'm giving you I gave the information based on what I thought it is at the time.
And we're just talking about residential, not commercial.
I understand. I'm gonna,
That's because commercial is even higher cost.
Yeah. And I went and got some information from our 3 contractors, 3 sprinkler contractors.
Okay.
And they have provided letters, so I can provide them to you as well. And if you want, I can provide a copy of it. Is that okay?
I welcome that.
Okay, so let me do that.
You can get it to us later. I mean, we're not, we're just, you're going to be getting packages of information to us?
No, I thought you might not read it as the same.
We're not taking, we can't, staff is recommending we don't take action, but we're getting ourselves educated tonight.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
And I have here, it says new constructions, and one of the companies called Elite Fire Protection. Residential new construction is $1.50 to $2 per square foot. Retrofit is $3 to $4 per square foot on the residential.
Yeah.
And then I have another company
Yeah.
that has similar numbers, $1.30 to $1.80 on the square footage on this one, and $2.50 to $4.50 on a retrofit. And I have another one that basically, this one goes by number of sprinkler heads, so it's a little different. It's hard to compare. Now,
And that is inclusive of, that's the cost of, that they charge to the customer?
that's the charge, yes, that's what they charge.
Okay,
the
and
customer.
then on top of that are soft costs, the costs for the permit and fees, the cost for design.
Well, this one, it says these estimates include labor, material, engineering, plans, and permits. That's
Okay.
what it says.
No, I beg to differ, but this is no, it's not going to happen.
That's fine. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
it's
tell you
not
what
gonna
I have
happen.
gathered.
I did
Now-
construction lending at a bank for almost 35 years,
I understand.
and it's just not going to happen.
But let me explain one other thing. When we talk about backflow prevention device, they're not required for residential.
They are for commercial.
For commercial, they do,
Right.
not for residential.
Right.
Residential occupancies, they just tie into the same domestic water.
Yeah,
The whole purpose.
I was wondering about that. Some jurisdictions require it for residential, some don't. So,
No.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, okay.
The whole purpose of residential sprinklers, when originally was developed back in the early 80s, was to make it cost-effective for residents to be able to do it as cheaply as possible, and that's why this tied into a same domestic water. It doesn't require any special meter. It doesn't require any special backflow. 3/4-inch meter is what is most of the residences required to do.
And you do, another part of the cost you require for the permit is hydraulic testing?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We do what is called bucket test, which is
But isn't that after the installation?
is after the pipes are in.
So how do you know you're going to pass the bucket test unless you do a hydraulic test up front?
They do hydraulic calculations, and we field verify with the bucket test.
Okay. And if you can't meet the hydraulic test or pass the bucket test, then you got to put a booster pump and tank in.
No, they don't put a tank. If they if they don't have adequate water, they use a pump. The pump that they use, if they don't have adequate pressure, they use a pump. Typically, the city water has adequate pressure to provide to the sprinklers, unless you're coming of a private water system, which you have a tank and a pump.
Okay.
On a non-private water system, city has plenty of pressure almost throughout the county to adequately provide, because the sprinklers for residential, they only require 7 pounds of pressure to operate.
Okay, well,
Okay,
and I'm sorry to get into that
No,
detail.
I just-
That's my mistake.
That's quite all right. I just
All
want to
right.
make sure I answer.
Because I do, to
Now,
me, that's where I was coming from is, and I appreciate the data you're going to distribute to us to help us understand and read, and hopefully you're going to entertain further dialogue between us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is to get a handle on these benefits, because that's a critical matter.
Correct.
Is the benefit cost analysis for me. And then to make one more point before, I'm sorry, this is what I do sometimes, is commercial, what is the general feeling? I could not find anything about comparing the benefit for light commercial to residential. I would think the benefit would be higher for residential since you're sleeping there, so the risk is higher. So does the benefit lower,
Commercials,
calculated benefit using this type of analysis lower for commercial than residential, because no one's sleeping there?
commercial occupancies are typically property protection because they are, mostly people are aware and they're awake, so they're
Right.
able to exit. They're not sleeping.
Right.
So they're more mainly used for property protection.
Right.
There are some hazardous occupancies that the fire sprinklers provide protection of not allowing the hazard to spread. So when you look at the fire for commercial, sprinklers for commercial, you're looking at a lot of the property protection. Now, residential sprinklers is mainly designed for life safety. However, through the years and years that has been used, it has been able to save structures as well.
And I don't disagree with that, okay? But the point I want to finish my point and then turn over to Board Member Hanson. So we agree that the additional requirements on commercial, say small retail, et cetera, in your proposal, it would be an even lower benefit because it's the life safety issue is where the big number comes in. According to these kinds of analysis here, the property damage is not as big a number, and the costs are higher because you require a separate tap for all commercial, no matter how small, as I understand it.
That's correct.
Even if it's smaller than a house,
It requires a separate tap.
a separate
because
tap.
That's what the
So
water
your costs are a lot higher. So the benefit cost ratio is even narrower
If I,
for light commercial than it is for residential, based on that general observation.
okay, let me answer your question since you talked about the gain versus benefit of the gain versus loss
Yeah.
benefit type thing. First of all, when we talk about structure fires, you have to realize that they are huge. They are very resource intensive. When you have a fully structured fires, you're talking about a lot of the fire resources dedicated to that structure. At the same time, you have to realize that they take a lot of water in order to control and extinguish a fully involved structure fires. Anywhere in the neighborhood of 150 gallons to 250 gallons a minute. So you can see in about 10 minutes, you are disposing about 2,500 gallons of water. Water is expensive. Water is valuable.
Okay.
We are using a lot of it to extinguish fires
Yes, sir.
in buildings that are not sprinklered. So there's a benefit. Also, you have to look at the socioeconomic impact of a building that has a fire. All of a sudden, you put a business out because of a fire, you're talking about a loss of business, you're talking about unemployment, you're talking about the tax revenue that is not coming back to the city. There's a lot of factors that is going to be taken into those numbers that needs to be looked at. With the fire sprinklers, that business is back in business same day. Same day. That is huge. You're not shutting down the business. That business may leave, may never open again. So having that business to continue is a factor that needs to be taken into account when those calculations are done.
And I concur with that. And that's part of, everything we need to take into account. I'll try to wind my
I understand. And
session up and bring it up.
Yeah, I understand.
And after Board Member Hanson has her question, we'll see if members of the audience want to come forward and ask questions too. Go ahead.
I just want to also address the residential. I guarantee you, you talk to any person who has been in a fire, in a residential fire, who have saved their lives or saved one of their loved ones' lives, they come and testify, no amount of money would have, at that point, they would have come and say, I didn't care how much it was. Having my family safe, it was worth more than anything else you could have asked. I mean, those things.
And I understand.
Value on
It's
it.
just,
think
I come
it's
from
huge.
I come from a background of doing public policy analysis in a quantitative way. So
I mean, numbers are good, but I think sometimes just understanding or putting relative emotion to it or what it does to the lives of people is also important that the numbers cannot represent.
Thank you.
Very well, sure.
Thank you.
Hanson, sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I hate to be putting you on the spot because I think you guys do a great job.
I appreciate
I
it.
really
Thank you.
appreciate what you do for
Thank you.
Ojai and surrounding areas. But I have to say that I do agree with the two previous board members. I think that at the very least we should require, and maybe you do already, but I don't know. I'm in real estate and I don't know if there are any requirements for smoke detectors in garages. And I think that should be a requirement. I agree with what Bob Daddy said about clearing the brush, dead trees. I think there's so much more that we can do and should do before we start putting this kind of expense. I'm not the economist that Bill is, but I really appreciate his comments. I don't think we should go above state mandated law. I think that we should stay within what the state mandates. I see that staff has identified 3 alternatives for council consideration, and the third one, I would consider that. Develop requirements for Ojai which are more restrictive than the state code, but different from the county, because I think for our topography, going up these high winding roads where there are residences up there, maybe we need to take some consideration for that, for those areas, and I'd be willing to consider that. But just putting sprinklers in all of the places that, I know it's already required for new construction, but for adding on 50% or 1,000 square feet, I think that's really overtaxing for our people.
If I may address a couple of things you mentioned. First, you mentioned about smoke detectors in the garage. We can't put smoke detectors in the garage because the fume will activate it all the time.
I see.
However, the best protection is what we have already. That's what this appendix deals with. Putting sprinklers in the garage. Smoke detectors are passive type of fire protection. That means they're just going to operate, they're going to notify, they don't do anything to the fire. Sprinklers, they operate and they do something to the fire. They put the fire out for you. It's like having a firefighter in your house 24/7, 365 days a year. That is invaluable. So we are addressing. Now, going back to what Mr. Daddy said about we should do other things. What I'm trying to say is we are doing other things. We're doing many other things. The fire protection, the hazard reduction, all the issues about the brush clearance, we are doing those. All of these elements are they're like a machine, they work together. Having a brush clearance, having a smoke detectors in a house, having access, having adequate water, having sprinklers, those are all part of a fire protection. What I'm afraid of, if you remove one element of it, it's like taking one piece of this machine that is working so fine and is actually providing the protection we need. I'm just cautioned, I'm just worried that if we do this, it has other consequences of it. And we are doing that. Absolutely. Can we do more? 100% agree. Of course we can do more. And we're willing to do more. But removing this element that it is so important is not, to me, my personal view, is not the way to go with it.
Yeah. Well, that's what, I mean, we know your position on that. It's our responsibility to try to digest, analyze, since we're representing, the citizens of the council here. I'm going to ask if there's anybody from the audience. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah,
We're going to have another round of questions.
I just have one last question.
Sure.
In 2007, you said the state, and then in 2011, you made the recommendation?
No, 2011 is when the state started requiring sprinklers in residential. In 2007, our ordinance required it on all residential.
Okay.
And in 2011, the state came to the same place where we are today.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Again, so opportunity for anybody from the audience that'd like to. I'm sorry. Board Member Hilger, I'm sorry. I didn't see you soon enough.
Okay. During the last big fire that I can remember, I think it was 1988 or 85, people who lived up on the hillside had no water pressure. I mean, one of our friends was standing there with his hose and the water was just going. So fire sprinklers wouldn't do anything at all. They wouldn't be able to work. All the people on our street, the fire department, of course, was totally stressed and stretched to their capacity. And everyone on our street, which is on the flats, all the people were up on the roofs just, swatting out, because of the wind, swatting out the embers. That was the best that they could do. But I think education is just so important. And I know Mr. Costanza held seminars at different places around town that were just invaluable. I thought they were wonderful.
I mean, that's exactly like you said. There are many things we do. We have a Ready, Set, Go program. We have a Fire Safe Council in Ojai to deal with these issues. We have sprinklers. We have brush clearance. There's so many things we do for the fire protection. These are all part of the strategic plan. Now, going back to what you said about no water, I mean, just put it in a little bit of a perspective. First of all, residential sprinklers are designed to extinguish fires that are inside the house. Anything outside is outside. What we're trying to do is prevent fires from inside and trying to prevent fires from getting from inside to outside.
But they
That's
had no
what-
water.
Well, that's what I'm trying. When you have a structure that you need to fight fires, if there was water in the case, you're talking about 200 gallons a minute. Fire sprinklers, they require very, very little amount of water to work. They only require about 13 gallons a minute for one head, and they only need to design for 2 sprinkler heads. So you're looking at about 26 gallon, maybe 30 gallons of water. That's all you need. So you're looking at very little amount of water that is needed with very little pressure to do the job. Now, if you have a fully structured fire, you're dealing with 200 gallons a minute with a lot more pressure to do it. So we're trying to prevent that. So even when you don't have enough water, you probably have enough water to let the sprinklers actually work. Not for firefighting, but at least have the sprinklers operational.
Right. I think I really do agree in the policy of education, and I think more and more people who live in the valley and have been through fires have learned how to do a lot of things to protect their own homes, properties, and we'll continue to do that. And with more and newer techniques, it's only going to get better.
That's absolutely right.
They're very
We
aware.
have the Ready, Set, Go program. We
Right.
have done a lot of different community meetings, bringing the Ready, Set, Go program to the community
Right.
to teach individuals how to protect their community, how to protect their homes, clearing the brush, all of the things they need to do for the protection, because when there is a big fire, we don't have enough resources to
No.
address all of the issues.
No.
We don't have enough resources to go to structure fires.
Right.
That's why we have sprinklers. So if there is a structure fires, we don't have to dedicate a lot of resources to it. That is a big difference. It takes many resources for a fully involved structure fire.
The gentleman
thank
behind
you.
you is anxious to come forward. So, well, I want to make sure that member of the audience, any member of the audience that wishes to come forward has a chance before we continue with some questions at our side of the table here. So go ahead, sir.
Okay. My name is Wayne Maynard. I live at Gridley Road. And I'm here today in support of the Fire District Appendix Chapter and strongly encourage you to adopt it, which kind of brings up my first question is, with regards to the staff recommendation, are you obligated to go with the staff obligation, or can you pose a motion and approve it tonight? Yeah, I mean, there's other times when staff motions are not, or staff recommendations are not followed. And so it's my contention that you probably have the authority to do that if you so choose.
Yeah, it would be a recommendation to council anyway. We have no authority actually doing except recommend
Yeah.
the
And
council.
So if you, the purpose, I believe, of the, to postpone it was because of lack of information. Well, if you feel you have all the information needed to make the decision, you should do that tonight. That's my recommendation. Anyway, again, just a little bit of background myself. I'm a retired fire captain. I worked for the fire district for 36 years. I spent most of my career working in the Ojai Valley and in the Fire Prevention Bureau. I was actually involved, worked for the fire marshal in 1983 when the first fire districts ordinance was developed and adopted. And I keep hearing the term about you guys talking about this, referring to it as a new proposal. The fact is, the requirement to retrofit residences or any buildings because of additions has been in effect in the city of Ojai for over 30 years. And I strongly believe that if your recommendation to the city council is to not approve this ordinance, you need to have some very strong justification as to why you're going to reduce the standards that have been in place in the city for over 30 years.
Would you entertain questions?
Sure.
Hey, help me with
He
something.
has a question, so.
Yeah, when, a number of years
Like a
ago,
workshop here.
maybe about 15, well, we need to get information. That's important stuff.
And I don't mind giving you information if I have it.
I'm not sure if it was called the Firebird or the Thunderbird, but it's the Medicine Shop now.
Firebird Restaurant.
Okay. And at that time, somebody bought it, and they were going to take it down, and the further down they got, the more decrepit it was, and there was nothing there, and the wood was rotted, and everything was done. And when I got to town a few years prior than that, I was looking for an office to go into. So I went and looked at that building that was newly constructed, and there are no fire sprinklers in it at all. And that's about 16 or 18 years ago, and so help me understand if we had a 30-year-old...
I wish I could, because I go around town and I see all kinds of violations, and I don't know why they are and why that is.
I'm just trying to find out why we have a 30-year-old rule and we had an 18-year-old building, and a number of them, and they don't have fire sprinklers. And I just didn't think we had any fire sprinkler rules because I kept saying
things. I don't know the answer to your
Okay.
question.
Because I think our concern is, I don't think you've heard any of us question about new construction. It's been the issue about additional
Well, this
requirements.
appendix applies to new construction also.
I'm not sure how
It does.
the ordinance 28 does add anything.
It requires that all commercial buildings have to be sprinklered. The state requirements don't require all commercial buildings to
That's
be
true.
sprinklered.
You're correct. You're correct on that. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Anyway, so there's a lot of technical measures that you've been hearing tonight. Oh, and I just thought of something. I wanted to answer a question for you. During my career as a fire captain, I investigated 2 fires where fire sprinklers extinguished the fire and there was no water supply connected to the sprinklers. They were buildings that were under construction. There was test pressure on the system. They were full of water. A fire occurred in the building, the sprinkler head popped, and just the water in the pipe drained out and put the fire out. That's pretty impressive. Anyway, my biggest concern really is not with the technical merits of the sprinklers, because I think that's clear that they're here. But what I'd like to bring to your attention tonight is more of a political concern that I have. And that has to do with the message that's going to be sent by the city of Ojai to the other cities in the district. The fire district encompasses all the cities in the county except Ventura, Oxnard, Santa Paula, and Fillmore. And the fact is that the funding for the fire service, for the fire protection district, a larger portion of it comes from the East County, which are the larger cities that have higher densities, higher appraised values for their commercial and industrial properties. And those monies actually flow into the Ojai Valley to provide fire protection here. There's no way that the city of Ojai and the unincorporated or areas surrounding Ojai could afford the level of protection we have without those kind of monies coming in. And anyway, so, excuse me. Can I get a glass of water real quick? I'm just. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Apologize for that. So anyway, the money is flowing. There's money flowing from the East County to here, and every 5 years or so, one of the East County cities throws out a study and goes, how much money are we collecting or providing to the fire district for fire prevention, fire suppression facilities versus how much money we're getting back. And it always shows that there's more money leaving than what they're getting. And the fire chief has to go in and has done it many times where he will show that there's a benefit to the district as a whole, including the large cities, of having the availability of fully staffed, trained fire companies throughout the fire district. Any city that needs a lot of resources, say 20 fire engines, they just have to request them, and they come from throughout the district. And so far, those East cities have been buying that argument. And so we're getting a good deal for that. My concern is that all of those cities adopt this ordinance. They make their businesses, they make their citizens pay the extra fees to put the sprinklers in. What do you think those cities are going to think when the city of Ojai says, we don't want to play by those rules. We just want you to send us fire trucks. And, you know, I just don't think it's going to work. I'm really concerned about that.
Okay.
So what the Appendix L does is it's going to, it's adopted citywide, adopted district-wide. It provides equivalent protection throughout the district. And everybody's been playing by the same rules for 30 years. And I'm really concerned that if the city of Ojai chooses not to do that and chooses to select a lower level of protection, that it's going to affect the district's decisions in the future, how we're going to staff fire trucks and where we're going to locate fire stations.
Okay, thank you.
That's my concern.
Thank you. Any questions? That's certainly a consideration, absolutely.
Okay.
I hope myself to learn more about that issue, you know. I'd like to go, I have, any other member, thank you so much. Any other questions from the public? I have three quick questions, and then I just want to ask them and then see if others have some questions. We'll try to wind this up. You said something about 2 heads versus 4 head requirements on residential systems?
On residential single-family dwellings,
Right.
they're designed to only have 2 sprinkler
Right.
head operates.
Here's my technical question, real quick.
Sure.
My and I may be ignorant on this, that there's different national fire standards. There's NFPA BR and BD.
I'm not familiar with.
Okay.
Oh,
For installation standards.
I know NFPA numbers. I don't know about BR
Okay.
and BD.
And what's interesting, that you said BD is the lesser one, with just 2 heads for residential. There's other, like for higher story, that require 4 heads. But the BD doesn't require garages to be sprinkled with the 2 head rule, and the BR does. So I was just kind of curious. We'll get straight on that one.
Okay, if I may answer that real quick.
Yeah.
There are 2 NFPA standards. One deals with one and two family dwellings. Another one deals with multifamily dwellings.
Right.
The one that is dealing with single-family dwelling or 1 and 2 family dwelling is called 13D.
Right.
D as for dwelling.
Yeah.
The other one is called 13R. So I don't know. I didn't know BR and BD, but
Yeah,
they're
the
13
D and
13.
R there, yeah.
The 13D, which is for
Yes.
1 and 2 family dwelling,
Right.
it is designed for 2 sprinkler heads.
Right.
The state of California requires the garages to be sprinkled.
So they add to, what
Yes.
the national standard is.
That's
there.
correct.
I
They
now
require-
understand why.
That's
Okay,
that's
I
what
got
it was.
2 more questions real quick, okay? Please explain to me the rationale from a standpoint of trying to get people to willingly fire sprinkle. Why a small light commercial always requires a separate tap and a backflow preventer, and a house that could be larger, much larger than that small commercial does not, if we're trying to get this benefit-cost ratio straightened out. And I'm talking about a small retail, real light, low hazard occupancy. From
me
a
understand.
purely functional standpoint, what's the difference?
Okay, let me understand. You're saying a large home is not sprinklered?
A large home that is sprinkled, okay,
A large home is sprinkled, yes.
you said doesn't require backflow preventer, and if the hydraulics are in place, doesn't need a separate tap.
That's correct.
A very small commercial
It does.
does, no matter how small, no matter how low the hazard is.
I'll explain that.
What, yeah, please.
Absolutely. The small commercial.
Really raises the cost for commercial.
Absolutely. All the commercial occupancies, they're designed under NFPA, what is called NFPA 13. Not 13D, not 13R, but 13. NFPA 13 talks about the commercial sprinklers that requires much larger area to be designed for fire sprinklers. So you could have as many as 10, 12, 13 sprinkler heads operating to control the fire. Because, like I said, the commercial occupancies are designed, the fire sprinklers are designed for property protection. The residential is for life safety. When you talk about a property protection, there are a lot more hazards could be in that building. You could have storage of a flammable liquid. You could have storage of different kind of materials that are a lot more heat intensive. So they designed the commercial to control those fires. There are a lot more BTU are being delivered, a lot more energy being delivered. In a residential occupancy, your only main concern is, am I going to get those people safe out of the home? And the way, like I said, over the years, the sprinklers have worked so well, they actually put the fire house in residential because the contents and the things that are burning in a residential are very different than a commercial.
And I understand the
Commercial requires a
rationale,
totally
but
different-
we have a lot of very small commercial here in Ojai, so it's a particular concern. Because, yeah, you're talking
those-
about dramatically higher costs to have to, and I understand the rationale. I'm just saying,
Those-
we are talking about dramatically higher costs to have the separate tap, separate backflow preventer, encroachment permits, recurring costs. Golden State is going to charge you an additional recurring fee every month on that separate tap.
If I may explain
It's a problem. And
I just explain very quickly.
Yeah.
Ordinance does not require the existing commercial occupancies to be sprinklered unless they're adding square footage to existing.
I understand
More
that.
than 25%.
I
So
understand that.
I'm just saying, we are not here going back and saying everybody who is already existing needs to put sprinklers in. We're not
I
doing-
understand that. I'm just talking about if you have a very small and you want to add a little bit.
And if you, and
you
if
know.
you look at it in a way, the rationale a little bit behind it, economic, since you mentioned earlier, commercial businesses are designed to have, they generate money. They are actually earning money, they have profits, so some of that is.
Like a lot of these small business
No, I
owners, about
understand
how much
small
money they're
business.
making.
But what I'm saying is, if you really
Yeah.
compare, in a residential occupancy, like I said, in early 80s, when they were designed to be as cheap as possible, so any homeowners can afford it, that they can put it in their home.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have any question, I was just going to.
I have one last question, and I'll let you go. And
No, I have actually a comment I was going to make.
let
but
other
if you-
people around. My understanding, and I couldn't really understand whether this was part of the added requirement or whether it was required by state code, and that is the language that says you, L 104.1.3, modifications prohibited, where NFPA 13R sprinkler systems are provided in Group R occupancies, exceptions to or reductions in code requirements are not allowed based on the installation of either an NFPR 13R or an NFPA 13 sprinkler system. Is that an added requirement above state code where you don't allow fire sprinklers to mitigate in any way, say special circumstances of an historic building on a stairway width or something like that?
We have had cases that we have used automatic sprinklers for mitigation.
Does that say
What
you
we're
can't
saying-
do that?
No, what we're saying is that if the sprinklers are required, then we are not mitigating it with the sprinklers, we're mitigating with other things that we have.
Okay, well, because it says exceptions to or reductions in code requirements are not allowed.
If the sprinklers are required, they're not to mitigate, but if there are other measures available that could use for mitigation.
Okay, but that is over and above,
I'll let
is
Larry.
that over and above state code?
He is the staff, he has a lot more detailed stuff, he can explain that.
Hi, Larry Williams with Fire Prevention Staff. In regards to that question there, that specific item, it's based on when the code is saying you can do something with, you're getting an exception or modification to the code with fire sprinklers already required by the code for that modification. What we're saying is you can't use on a multifamily structure, you cannot use the 13R multifamily design. You have to use the 13, which means it's a fully sprinklered building. Multifamily 13R, there are certain areas of the building, like attics, that don't require sprinklers. But if you're going to get something, the code says, we'll let you do this if you sprinkle your building, it wants a sprinkler system throughout the building. So if you're just dealing with the stairway issue, no, that has nothing to do with the sprinklers.
Okay, I just read that and I wanted to, because I've been involved with exactly doing that, where to get to an adequate safety standard, you do that with fire sprinklers if it's much more expensive to try to, say, destroy the character of an historic building.
That section is triggered, the building is already being triggered for fire sprinklers by the code. It's just what design standard you're using is that code is. And there is provisions in the state code that speak to that same thing.
Okay, but is that language that's here part of the addition?
Portions of that is in.
It's part of what you're proposing that we adopt over and above the state minimum?
It covers all of it. There's already some exception, some items where it says that in the code, and we're carrying across the board for if anything, when you're going to use sprinklers as the mitigation measure, you have to make sure you're getting a fully sprinklered building.
Okay, thank you. All right, other questions?
Mr. Chair, just to kind of clarify,
Yeah.
the building code allows added stories to be added if the building is fire sprinklered, and what they're saying is you can't double dip on that, or larger area.
Okay.
So that's where that is coming from, is that you would have to use the 13 system in that application.
Okay, thank you. Let's do another round of questions, if there are any, from board members. And then we come to close on our,
I was going to add a comment, but
please add a comment, and like I said, I think this has been useful. I don't know if we're ready to proceed immediately to a recommendation over and above because the staff says more information's coming.
well, actually, more information is what I already read to you, but I don't know how I can provide you with that.
I'm sure all you have to do is to provide it to staff, and they'll get it to us.
The more
Absolutely.
information was just about the letters of the sprinkler.
Okay.
The reason is because we were waiting for the sprinkler contract to send us letters saying what they charge, so that's what the holdup was.
And I'm going to defer to staff, Mr. Stewart, Kathleen, on
I
this.
don't-
If we want to get into all of a back and forth on seeing this information, posing questions, transmitting questions to you, getting responses.
I would like
You know-
the opportunity to sit down with the fire marshal and look at his information
Okay.
and do some staff background on that before we present that to
Well,
the board.
again, as long as we also have a Q&A as part of that, you know.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the stage we're at. We've kind of done a preliminary staging here of what the issues are, and you've seen where we're coming from. We understand your position. Why don't you finish with your comment, and then we'll proceed.
I just want to say that, we talked about, several times we talked about why do we need to go above and beyond this state. I just want to give you another example, if you will. City of Ojai, 2012, you adopted an ordinance for no plastic bags in grocery stores, correct? That's above and beyond the state. Recently, in January, you adopted the ordinance about the styrofoams, banning styrofoams in restaurants, above and beyond the state. Why? Well, because you recognize the importance of saving environments. You recognize the state is not there, but you recognize that it is important for us to do it today, and you adopted ordinance to deal with it. It's the same exact thing. We are, and one day the state will get to exactly where you are. We'll ban plastic bags, we'll ban styrofoams, but this takes state time to get there. But you recognizing that fact, that importance, and acting on it shows the leadership. And what we're asking is the same thing. We have been doing this. As your fire district, we have been looking ahead. We have tried to be the leader in the industry. We have done our work. When we adopted the sprinkler ordinance, we were above and beyond the state. And the state partially is where we are today, since we have been since the 80s and modified in 2007. So to say, let's not do anything and let the state get to where it wants to be, I think you have to look at it as leaders. We want to take actions. As leaders, we want to be ahead. We see they recognize the community, what it needs, and we're providing it. And we want to stay ahead of the game. We did our fire protection, we did our fire hazard reduction program. We were ahead of many other states. We were ahead of everybody. We were the only one doing it. And now everybody's following. So we want to be ahead. We want to stay that. We want to be able to provide the fire protection that we think this community deserves, this county deserves. As your fire protection district, I highly, highly encourage you to please consider sending your approval or sending your recommendation for approval to City Council.
I definitely think we're going to consider it. I think we're all in agreement. We're on a stage here of engaging in some more information dispersal and some Q&A amongst all of us, and Mr. Stewart and you. So
And as you
I think
think
that's
about
the
the
stage we're at, and
cost-
we're gonna proceed.
Yeah, as you think about the cost, please put the human element and the loss, what will happen to the employees, what will happen to the socioeconomic of the residents of the community, into perspective when you think about the cost analysis of it, because those numbers don't reflect that. One
Understand
last
that.
thing, if I may.
What,
do you have anything?
are we, I think we're ready to proceed. Is there
I didn't know
anything?
if you have anything you want to add or not. You're good?
I don't think there's anything. I think
Okay.
we've pretty well
All right. Thank
gotten to
you.
a point where we can let you go.
I appreciate it. Thank
And
you.
I really appreciate your time, and believe me, we're going to diligently educate ourselves about these issues, and we appreciate the interchange and the continued Q&A that we're going to engage in. So thank you very much.
I'm available anytime. Anytime you have any questions, I'm available to answer. I'll work with the staff
Okay.
to provide more information as you need.
Right, and I heard something about that, and I you know, I'll probably call
Available.
somebody soon
Yeah, I have my
about
phone
trying to
number
set
is
up
available.
some,
The staff
about
can
your
provide you
request.
with my number. If anytime you have a question, please feel free to call me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, in the interest of time, we're going to go into informational items.
Discussion item.
Excuse me?
It's item 3.
On the item 3, yes, I'm getting there. Item 3 is the future agenda items. I don't have anything in item number 3. What do you have? Go, Mr. Daddy. Future agenda items.
I would really love to see the ombudsman show up and talk to us about the process, what's happening, how people are coming forward, what kind of program they think it is, what they're encountering, if he's being contacted where people are reticent to step forward like Mr. Castagna. It just kind of, let's kind of find out what's going on. And if we have a lot of people that are not taking this opportunity, let's find out why. Are we not making it public enough, or they think that bulldozer's going to come crashing through that deal? We kind of need them to let them know what happened. And after the last meeting, we said, we're not going to approve garage approvals, and that's fine. And if I had one, I'd be wondering, oh my God, then what happens to this structure? What are the options? What do I need to do? So, and then with, the setbacks, and I listened to one of the planning commissioners talk about the confusion as to if all the city setbacks got changed or just in overlays. And so as I hear these things from the planning commission, and I hear from actual people that want to be applicants, it appears to me that there's a lot more work to do to educate them, because I'm not seeing a flood of people run in, and I would think that, wow, here's their opportunity, especially the minimum of 58 people that paid as much as $16,000. I would think that those people would want to come in and get this thing over with, and it is something where we need to determine what's up with the program. So, thank you.
Well, on future agenda, I think the issue of Appendix L is going to be a future agenda item as soon as we get additional information. Is there a problem with having the ombudsman come and give us a briefing at the next meeting as a future agenda item? I think that's two future agenda items that would be very useful. Are there others? Mr. Farmer?
Yeah, Chairman Bill, I have a question. It's regarding a memorandum that came out on January the 29th by, I think it's from you, Ann. Okay.
She's a new kid on the block. Yeah.
Anyway, it came out on from Ann McLaughlin, and you mentioned 58 or 68 that hooked into the sewer. I think it's 68 to be exact.
I have no idea. I have letters from the sanitary district with the addresses of 58 people.
Right. Well, I'm looking at a memorandum that went out here, and it says a total of 5 units have been completed to date under the compliance program, attachment A. It says, with regard to the Ojai Valley Sanitation District sewer connections, 20 connections have occurred, which may be second units and would not be verified. Now, this is as of January the 29th. So I don't quite understand where the 20 comes when, in fact, there's 58. I think I counted 68, actually.
Well, the start date goes back on these things to 2010 or 2011 on the letters.
Yeah, I have the start,
And
I have the
there-
start date from 2011.
I can send you those. I got those at the house.
I have a copy of them right here.
Okay.
But they go from, the first one came out July the 12th to you, Rob, Robert Clark. And there was actually something like 39 total then. Then there was a letter that came to you on October the 19th. There was 7 total. One on January the 20th, there was 3 total. April the 19th, 2012, there was 3 total. And July the 12th, there was 4 total, and I can go on. I think I counted about 68 of them.
So, Mr. Clark?
Yeah, thank you, and that's a good point to clarify. So whenever the sanitary district approved one of these connections, they'd send us a letter notifying us of that. And it's true, there was some number in the range of 58 to 60 that we received, but of those, there were 20 where we didn't have a record of a second unit. So there may have been a record of a second unit in the others. I don't know what the situation is. But only 20 of those that paid the amnesty through the sanitary district were places where there was no record on the city records of a second unit. So we did contact all those 20 people, let them know about the program. That was really our first push to see how the program worked. And we did have some of those come forward.
Mr. Danny?
Yeah, I'm confused with the math. Okay, so let's just say we have the 58 or 60 or whatever the number is. And we didn't have a record of the second unit.
So again,
What does that mean? There's 40 units out there? I don't understand what the difference of our record of the units and I don't understand why are people paying for a hookup for a unit they don't have?
no.
I mean, that's why I'm confused. What happened to all the extra ones?
They're paying for a hookup to a unit where there is a record of a unit. So for example, someone had a second unit that was not hooked up or was connected to the main house or something. They went through the amnesty program, but they already had a legal second unit as far as the city's concerned. So of the 58 notifications that we received, only 20 of those were where there was no record of a second unit in our records. In the others, there was a record of a second unit. They were just getting up to speed sewer-wise.
Mr. Farmer, does that?
So you're saying that
60%.
the city would have on record that that second unit was permitted?
Right.
Mr. Daddy, did you have an additional question on that?
No, but it appears that, with numbers like that, that's a pretty good number because it appears about 60% of the people that went and paid were already okay. They already had
Yeah.
a permit. I'm just kind of shocked the sanitary district didn't pick that up and say, hey, there's millions here, let's go through our records and fix it.
Okay, so there were other,
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's new. I appreciate the additional clarification on that. That's
so
definitely.
again, we had a committee that was involved in the early preparation of round 4 of the housing element, and they came up with this estimate of 300 or 300 plus illegal units or unpermitted units out there. But we don't know how they came up with that, and so we don't really know what the number is of people that are out there ineligible. But I do think your idea of meeting with the ombudsman and finding out what he's run up against is a good thing to do. And that'll help educate you. And
Yeah, just
move
we're
on
going
from
to
there.
try to keep chipping away at making this more effective. Now, are there any more future agenda items before we go to our last agenda item, number 4?
I just want
Board
to
Member
ask
Hanson?
about garage conversions and the homeowner living in one of the units. Is that going to come up for discussion soon?
The deed restriction issue, I believe, is going to be part of Mr. Merckx and I's discussion, which
Okay.
everyone is invited to Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. in the conference room. It's a noticed meeting, and we're going to be trying to work out what kind of a joint recommendation with the Planning Commission and Appeals Board can be done to both groups' satisfaction, which hopefully will be somewhat persuasive to council if we can achieve that.
Okay, so both garage conversion and the deed restrictions will be?
Yeah. Everything that we went through in the workshop.
Okay.
Okay. Are we done with future agenda items? I am kind of looking at Mr. Clark and Ms. Wald here. I see your name, Ms. Wald, on the transmittal. The administrative report on discussion item for number 4 is from you. I don't know if you're wishing to go on this one or Mr. Clark. I'm just asking. I don't know. I just saw your name on it, that's all. So, because we wanted to go, what we're doing here is reviewing and hopefully approving the documents for use by the Community Development Department when people come to file appeals and discuss the procedures for handling these.
Right. To give a brief staff report, this is just an overview of documents that your staff is requesting that you review and approve these documents for use in the CDD department. And as you just said, I think I'm just repeating what you just said, and that I think that there was a request came in to just kind of review the procedures, our forms, and pertinent code sections. And I think we've provided all that information for you. And so,
Well, let's go through
Yeah.
each one at a time.
Oh, you want
okay?
me to?
No, why don't we'll just start,
Oh, okay.
see if there's questions,
Sounds good.
each one. I know that there has been some concern about the filing fee. The filing fee is per action of the City Council in June of 2013, that you pay $500 if you wish to file an appeal, and that will be refunded if the appeal is granted. If you lose, obviously, you pay it. I'd like to just see if there's opinions among the members as to whether that should be lowered or not.
I think it should be lowered. I think it's way too high.
Mr. Daddy? We're not doing anything here, we're making a recommendation to
No,
council. if we-
recommendation, I mean-
We're going to ask council to look at this fee if we feel it's important to do so.
People are going to come forward with a $500 fee. Come on.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk to the ombudsman and find out if 20 people had contacted him and said, well,
So
take our
that's in other words,
chances.
an ombudsman discussion. Is this a problem, in other words? They don't have to pay $500 to talk to the ombudsman on the second unit compliance program. I don't even know if we've made it clear that they can talk to the ombudsman about filing an appeal.
Well, here, let me finish my question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I would like to see on our website is and I have so much papers, I can't keep them straight. But we have one bracket of paperwork, and it goes through all the different years and all the different expenses expected to pay. And so I think you start out in the very low thousands, and we run up into the 25, 30,000 on the new ones, right? 16,000 of that is going to be the sewer, and then we have the other ones. I'd kind of like to see that put on the site along with this $500 so people can see what they're looking at. I think what people don't want to do is, and again, we've said this a number of times, and it's just not satisfying, because I have to deal with this personally. When I go to insure somebody, the first question I say is, what's not permitted? And they look at me like, oh my God. And I said, I'm going to have to show up with money if it burns down. Nobody else is going to do that. I think they really need to know, because I think what they want is they really want the final answer before they ask the first question. And the first question is if I'm looking at 30 grand and I'm looking at 500, and I've already spent 16,000, they know they can go back to the sanitary district and they get their $16,000 back if they don't get a permit. And hopefully everybody else understands that too. So then they're looking at being out $500 if there's a no. And I think last week, and there's no blame or anything, it's just, hey, we're trying to figure this out. It was a revelation to me when we had our joint meeting that we weren't doing garage conversions. Well, I'd have been kind of ticked off if I'd have sent $500 in here and I was trying to do this, and that's like garage conversions aren't eligible, and
I can see
and
that
you don't
Mr.
get the
Clark
money
wants to
back,
speak to
so-
this.
I think
Mr.
we're
Clark.
getting a little bit mixed up on this particular fee.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, one of your duties that's completely separate from
The
providing-
quasi-judicial
Yeah,
function,
the-
right.
The board has two separate functions. One function is to advise the city council on changes to the building code, and you've spent a lot of time
Right.
doing that, and I'm sure you will continue to spend a lot of time doing that.
Right.
Your other function is as a hearing board. If the building official makes a decision and the applicant wants to appeal that decision because they disagree with it, they can appeal to you, and you're the hearing board to hear that
Right.
appeal.
Correct.
So this $500 fee is what we called, when it was approved last year, the low-cost appeal fee. So it's much lower than the cost of a normal appeal fee, and I have forgotten what that actual cost was. And also, it's refundable if you prevail,
Okay.
which is not the case with other fees. So we had a very large discussion with the city council, and if you want, we can bring some of that material back.
No,
to
that's
it
good
when-
background,
when
that it
meetings,
in fact was fully vetted by council. That's
yeah,
good to know.
we had a very extensive discussion about these issues,
And the council wanted to make it easier for people who had legitimate complaints to bring them forward. And so they did approve this lower fee, and also the provision that if you prevailed, you get a refund. But having some fee reimburses some of the cost
Right.
of processing a fee where you don't win, where it's potentially a frivolous fee.
So in other words, it was considered a mitigation structure to get to this point?
Yeah.
Mitigating
And-
fee?
and-
Okay.
And we'd be, if the board is interested in seeing the staff reports that were produced at that time, we'd be glad to share those with you.
Rob, do they still
Farmer.
have a conceptual review fee
Yes.
for, and what is that?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Sherry, do you know?
$440.
And that's basically, if I can remember right, because I was doing some construction at the time, that's just to bring it to the planning commission to see what they think, right? And then whether or not if they think the same thing that you thought when they were there, then, or they pulled some convenient amnesia or something, you're out that $400.
Well, let me ask just a related question to all of that then. In the application, part of the application process in the form here is to an option of meeting, an informal meeting with the building official. Does that trigger a fee, the informal meeting with the building official?
No, that
No.
doesn't.
Okay. Just want to make sure about that. Okay. And, thank you, Mr. Clark.
This,
Could I ask that you do provide us that background? So again, we go from the point of view of being educated before just coming up with some opinion? Yes.
it's just an opportunity for the applicant to put in writing to the building official for consideration of his request. And then it would require the building official then to respond in writing, and meet with the applicant to verify the concerns. And a lot of times, just that process, the item is resolved before it goes to the appeals board.
Yes.
So it's just a matter of sometimes discussion. There's misunderstandings. When we put it in writing, it helps with the whole process, both ways.
Absolutely, and since we're on the form, is everyone okay with the board if we get into the form itself? On the application, if somebody comes in and needs to know how to circle CBC, CEC, CMC, CPC, OMC, is that done at the counter, Sherry?
Typically, the first process, the code interpretation, we will have identified a code section that is in question.
During the permit application discussion?
During the permit application and the code interpretation. So,
Okay.
and of course, we're going to work with the applicant in that regard. So by the time it gets to the appeals board application, they will have that figured out.
And just another question I have is the certification under penalty of perjury, is that standard for any quasi-judicial procedure? I'm just asking. For the average citizen, it's a little intimidating for an average citizen. If it's necessary procedure, that's what I'm asking, that people sign under penalty of perjury
That's the way I've always seen applications.
for building appeals.
Well, I'm not talking specifically for building appeals, but any application, you're always signing that.
For the permit and all that kind of thing, it's part
Planning
of.
permits,
Okay.
just general applications, we're wanting people to be truthful and accurate.
No, I agree, we certainly do. I just wanted to know if it was standard procedure for something like this, in terms of filing an appeal. Okay. And if, I assume that, then we have attached additional information is needed. Last question, and I'll turn it around, Robin. If they choose not to meet with the building official, and also if they do meet with the building official, they're talking about a written interpretation, prepared and mailed. Who is the distribution list on that mailing, besides the applicant and the building official? Does that go to members of the appeals board, or does it go to, in other words, what's the distribution list on that mailing?
I don't really know. I was just assuming it would go to the applicant, to the file, the project file, to applicant, and just to staff. I mean, it doesn't need to go to the appeals board until.
I'm just asking.
Well, I would
you know.
think, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to dialogue a little bit here, but I would think that it would go to the appeals board at the point that somebody came in and actually filed a building appeal application, then we would have all that as part of the administrative record that would go along with it.
Is that considered a public document at the point of it being mailed?
Oh, yes, uh-huh.
Okay. I'm not wedded to this, but my gut feeling is it might help members of the appeal board to see those interpretations, just from the standpoint of educating ourselves, if in fact it is a public record.
I mean, like to place it in a read file or something
Yes.
like that? Well, that's.
And I just, I wonder what others thought about that on the board, just from the standpoint of being aware of those interpretations, or of having access to them if they are not considered proprietary or private in some respect.
I can't imagine, can you imagine a situation? I can't.
Just the opposite.
Okay.
Typically, when the building official makes the interpretation, that is the interpretation for the department for all code issues related to that. So it's clearly public record.
Well, I think it'd be very useful to keep us in the loop on that, just from the standpoint of.
As far as
attempting to get us-
information?
Yeah, as far as information.
I see no problem with that at all.
And I think that would be excellent. Other comments
Yeah,
on the?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering about when someone comes in and talks about an application for appeal, would we be notified just if they're inquiring about it? Or whether or not it goes forward or not?
Well, it may be helpful if I just kind of describe to you how this process normally happens. Normally it's most appeals, if necessary, are created through the plan review process before it starts the construction. And the applicant.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. The applicant will say, I don't agree with your interpretation on X. At that point, if they make that known to staff, we will, and they want to get an official code interpretation from the building official under state mandate. The building official is the person who interprets the code on behalf of the city. We would be happy to give them this application for code interpretation, and they could fill that out. And at that point, then I, as the city building official, would review that request, and then more than likely sit down with the person filing the request for application so I could thoroughly understand what their position is. And then I would be obligated under this procedure to write back to them with my official interpretation. At that point, if they disagree with that interpretation, then that's when they can appeal it to the Building Board of Appeals. But just the way the system works is that the building official has to render an interpretation before it can be considered by the Board of Appeals.
And I think the sense of this board is that it helps us getting educated if we are also in the loop on seeing those interpretations. It helps us understand the process better.
Absolutely.
So I think
I totally agree.
That would be useful. All right. I believe we are done and ready to adjourn unless Board Member Hilger.
Okay. When a person comes in and gets the code interpretation application and the building appeal application, do they also get this information about the Building Appeals Board? No.
Well, we haven't had
Well, it
anybody
has-
come in and ask for these things, but we should, as a matter of practice, inform the public as to what happens. I mean,
Right.
I think there would be, I'm sorry, I'm kind of sitting awkward because of my foot, but so generally speaking, we're not, when the building official, most appeals or requests for code interpretation are probably going to be by professionals. They're going to be architects or somebody of that nature. So they're probably going to understand this scenario that we have laid out here. But just to be on, a full disclosure to anyone who wants to do it, I think that this would be available as a handout explaining to be less intimidating to people so people feel comfortable coming before you, or even, you know how it is. We're trying to make that whole process open. So yes, we would probably have this handout available to people.
Yeah, many cities actually post this on the website,
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea. I mean, we all know that if you're a
both the
layperson,
procedures and the form itself on the website.
as most cities do with most procedures, because we try to open that black box up, right?
Exactly.
So that, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. All right, Board Member Daddy, we're trying to wind up here.
Question?
Oh, sorry. Former Mayor Blatz and
Before you adjourn.
Council Member.
You
Yes,
know,
thank you.
this is a tough time. Last night we had Kathleen, we had Betsy with a hand wrapped up.
Yeah, I know.
We had Carol, who just had back surgery. Today we have Tommy over there.
In his wheelchair.
You know, I never thought I'd see the day.
Fell down his own.
You know?
Oh, my
You know,
God.
we've known each other a long time, and here you are being brought in a wheelchair.
42 years in the same house and you fall down the stairs.
That's sobering.
It is.
Yeah.
And they said, when they came and got me on the stairs, the guy said, we have good news and bad news. Good news is, you're at 12:02, you're the first one in the county of Ventura to have any kind of an emergency. The bad news is, we're gonna have to straighten your broken leg off to get you out of the stairs.
God.
That's a
That's
mental
horrible.
discipline there.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, I
Anyway.
want to let the board know that you've definitely been elevated to the level of having a city council liaison from this point forward.
And we're so happy. We're so happy to have you.
The council approved having a liaison assigned on a permanent basis to this board. It's going to rotate quarterly, just like our other commissions do. So you'll have me for this month and next month, and then it'll rotate on to somebody else. But I'm looking forward to it because I can't tell you how happy I am with the work of this board. And the issues that are presenting themselves to you are really, really critical issues. Particularly, I'm very interested to see how you come back with the issue of the garages.
Yeah.
Really.
Yes.
Because that's going to be a tough one. And it's a very important aspect of this second dwelling unit compliance program as to whether or not it's going to be included or not. And thank you for all of your due diligence on the issue of the fire sprinklers. It's come before the city council twice, and we recommended that we didn't feel we had enough time to really dig into it. And this is the perfect place for it to be dug into, so thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and your leadership on this very
I
much.
appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Sherry,
Did you approve the forms so they can be posted to the website? 'Cause
are we okay with the forms as presented for posting on the website? Yes.
I didn't know that we're going to do that, but gavel it, and we'll look at it some more, and if there's anything, we'll bring it back. This isn't going to be the last time.
Is that a no, or?
No, I'm fine with it. I'm fine.
Okay.
Gavel it.
Then we're done. Thank you. Appreciate everyone's patience. Mr. Councilman Blatz, I do have a question for you as liaison. Official question as liaison.
Yours sounds much better.
I was very unhappy with being threatened by everyone.